Hey up everybody, welcome back to the Out Cycling YouTube channel, where today we're going to be taking a look at the Velogames Tour de la Provence. It's only a 4-stage race. Then again, we are quite used to those because the Étoile de Bessèges was shortened down to 4 stages, but George has very much increased the price of Mads Pedersen, who is the most expensive rider. He's now 28 credits instead of the 20 that he cost in the Étoile de Bessèges. I think that this is making things a little bit trickier, but I do believe that Pedersen is still worth it at 28, considering that he could very well win all 4 stages. He was worth it in the Étoile de Bessèges, and he's very much still worth it here. Pedersen could realistically win all 4 stages. That gets him 600 points. He wins the overall GC. That's 300. He gets the points classification. That's 960. You know, he could quite easily hit 1,000 points in the space of 4 days, and therefore I do believe that Pedersen is still good. Zongler is like a Pedersen, but like a tier below, and I think that him being 24 credits is actually what's making this quite hard, is that Zongler is the second favourite. He is a decent prologue rider, and he will be able to sprint as well, especially on that. Well, it's stage 2, but it's actually kind of stage 3, but there's a prologue of a start. Zongler, I do believe, is the second favourite, and that is reflected in his price. I think it is quite hard to get both of these onto a team without having to then use a load of 4-credit riders, of which there aren't that many good ones. Bennett is, you could argue, the fastest sprinter in the race. I would probably say Pedersen is, but I do think that Bennett is still a very good choice. There is also Gotterat. You could go with him as well. He is looking very strong, but we'll get onto him in a minute. Bennett, I don't know. I'm always a little bit kind of skeptical about Bennett. He sometimes does really well, but this isn't, green jersey winning Bennett anymore. And also Decathlon AG2R La Mondiale team. That's a mouthful. Don't have the strongest lead out, and they're not very experienced in it. So Bennett's probably he will be good. There's definitely going to be 2 sprints, but you really want somebody who's going to be competitive in the prologue as well. I'm not sure if Bennett's going to be that guy. Hofstetter, I would rather go with Bennett over Hofstetter, to be honest with you, just because I think Israel have a few other riders who could be the kind of their leader in this race. I just also don't think that Hofstetter's the fastest sprinter. I think that Bennett is far better. Remy Rojas, the terrain does not suit him. Do not pick Remy Rojas. Dujardin will be leading Total Energies. He was good in the Étoile de Bessèges. He will need to do a good prologue, ideally finishing inside the top 10, but in theory he is good for that stage 2. With the slight uphill drag of like 4% to the finish, he will be very strong there, probably a top 5 finisher there. And he'll probably be inside the top 10, but is he worth it at 16 credits? Maybe, maybe not. Ferrand, I would rather go with Dujardin personally, so I would just not go with Ferrand. Amaral is also a very strong time trialist, so should do very good in that prologue to start with, and therefore just take GC points throughout the rest of the race, so he'll probably finish inside the top 10. Considering that I don't see him being dropped on the climbs, because he is a decent climber. Champoussin, I don't think this race particularly suits. I would say Amaral's a safer choice. Godon, again, they've got Bennett here, so I just don't think about Godon as being the guy for this team, but you never really know, because they do have, Amaral, Godon, Gotterat, Bennett, who they're going to go with. I don't really know. Sven Bistrom, he'll do a good prologue, but will he be sprinting as well? He's not a fast enough sprinter, in my opinion, to be competitive in flat sprints. He'll be good on that stage 2, but I don't see him being competitive outside of 2 stages. But at 12 credits, that's pretty decent. Decker, do you remember when this guy was at Jumbo-Visma, UAE Tour, and he was like the next big sprinter, and now he's just at Arkea B&B hotels, and he's just this complete, I don't know, he's just not that great anymore, to be honest with you. I would like to pick him. I think that he is probably a top 5 sprinter in this race, and I'm more than willing to be proven wrong. I do think that he could be good in the 2 flat sprints, and he isn't a good prologue rider by the looks of his results in the past, so probably not Decker, but I can understand that you might want him as a sprinter. Riley Sheehan, I think, might be slept on a little bit, but if this guy's really good, we all remember his Paris Tours last year where he won very surprisingly, and I've been looking back through his results, and actually he's a pretty decent prologue rider. So I would honestly say, there was a prologue last year where, I know it's kind of it wasn't the biggest race, but he only lost to Miguel Angel Lopez, who was in flying form, and that prologue was 5k long, but it included like 2k at 6%, and Sheehan was only like 10 seconds behind Lopez, so I think that Sheehan could be a pretty decent rider to be a top 10 candidate. Whether he'll be sprinting as well, I don't know. He did finish second in that Japan criterium thing that Edward Turns won last year, the Japan Cup, so I think that he is still pretty fast. Tyler Stites has gone up in price since his 3 top 10 finishes at the Volta Comunitat Valenciana. So he's a pretty fast sprinter. He's also a decent prologue rider. So I think that he could be a good one to be going with. But again, the fact that he rides for Project Echelon Racing, they're probably not going to be, the most experienced team when it comes to these sorts of bigger races. So Tyler Stites is a little bit of a risky one, but he could be a pretty good differential. Costiu has been decent in some prologues in the past. Gotolat, I am a big fan of for this race. The number of times where Bennett's been beaten by his lead-out man is quite a lot, actually. And I think that Gotolat has been really good recently. He was, top 5 in the GP Marseillaise. I think he came second behind Matthews at that, puncher sprint that there was in Spain a couple of weeks ago. So I think that Gotolat's in decent form, and it wouldn't surprise me. He's a decent climber too. It wouldn't surprise me if he was in top 10 GC. Kirsch, I think, will honestly also be top 10 GC, considering that he is a decent time trialist, so he'll probably get a decent buffer in the prologue. I don't think he'll win, but he'll also get assist points for Mads Pedersen, more than likely. So therefore, Kirsch, I can't knock. I think that's a pretty safe choice. Tom van Asbroek, if it's not Sheehan, if it's not Hofstetter, Asbroek is a decent puncher too, and pretty fast on a flat sprint too. So I think that Van Asbroek, again, decent choice. Watson, they might be going for Matt Walls in the flat sprints, I don't know. They might be going for Sven-Erik Beestelom, I don't know. Watson I do like because he is from near where I live, so therefore maybe there's a bit of bias going into this, but I think that Watson's still a decent choice. I do think that he could be top 15 GC because he's just a very good all-rounded rider. 8 credit riders, you've got Raul Garcia Piana. He used to be the Spanish time trial champion. His prologue performances aren't great, so bear that in mind. Just because somebody is good as a time trialist doesn't mean they're good as a prologue rider. And equally, if somebody is, not good as a time trialist, doesn't mean that they're not good as a prologue rider, if that makes sense. I'm sorry for you non-English speakers, because that probably made absolutely no sense. Ryan Gibbons, he is the South African road race and time trial champion, recently crowned, so therefore he's a good choice because he also gets the assist points for Mads Pedersen. So I like Gibbons. In fact, going for Pedersen, Kirsch and Gibbons is actually quite a safe trio to be picking out. Leroux, of course, he won a stage at Etoile de Bessèges. He's looking in decent form, so definitely nothing against that pick. McGill might be the sprinter for Project Echelon Racing over the Tyler Stites guy who I mentioned earlier, but they might go for Stites in terms of trying to get bonus seconds and stuff like that, so I'm not sure whether they'll go for Scott McGill. Tizza is a good sprinter for Bengal. They also have Davide Perisco. Whether they might go for him instead, I don't know. There's also the Barbier brothers, Pierre and Rudy. I can't remember which way round they're sprinting, but one of them sprinting and the other one's leading out. So just be sure to double check before you go with either one of those. Of course, you got De Klerk and Feline for lead or track. They'll get good assist points. No problems with those. Germani is a decent time trialist for Groupama, so he'll probably go, maybe top 10 in the prologue and therefore just carry GC points. So maybe he'll get you, I don't know, somewhere between 50 and 100 points at the end of the race. It's not great, but it's something. Very similarly for Eddie Louis-Touz, he could be a decent one as well. Perisco, he came top 10 in a few sprints in the Tour of Britain last year, which is why I think that he's not a bad shout. So Perisco, there is also Tizza, as I mentioned a minute ago. So bear that in mind. Vigard as well for the assist points, just because. And then Matt Walls is probably the most safe 6 credit rider. I would say I think your first choice should be Matt Walls, and then you can get it gets increasingly risky from there pretty much. For credit riders, there is very little. I quite like the look of Lucas Boniface just because He's just got kind of like a cool sounding name, but also, importantly, he was good in a lot of the French national races last year. He was winning a lot of sprints. He's like 1 meter 89 or something like that. So if they're not going for Sandy Dujardin in the flat sprints, I do think that Boniface could be sneaking some top tens. That's just like a really long. That's like long odds though. So don't hold me to that. Jeremy Leclerc as well. He finished top 10 in a couple of sprints at the Tour. I want to say, I think it was like 2021. So it was a few years ago, but he is a fast sprinter. I don't know whether he'll be the sprinter for Saint Michel Mavic Aubert. So we'll wait and see, but Leclerc is not a bad one. And then outside of them, you could go for Heisberg just for the assist points on Israel. They'll probably be top 5 in the team classification, so there's like a couple of points to be getting out there. And other than that, you are simply shooting in the dark. You could pick somebody who gets in breaks and be fantastic. You could not, and you could end up with nothing. So it's quite a tricky competition. I think that there's going to be very small margins between, the person who wins and the person who finishes in 100 could literally be like 30 points or something. Because I think there'll be relatively similar teams. This is my team at the moment. I'm not certain on it. I've just got Pedersen and Zongler in here because I think they'll probably both be on the podium, and then Sheehan and Rigotolat as some long shots. But I'd be very tempted to swap out Zongler and go for somebody like Amaral, and then put those 10 points into Leclerc and put in a Decker or a Kirsch and spread out the points a little bit more. But let me know what you're thinking in the comments down below. It's a little bit of a fiddly competition, so let me know if there's any 6 or 4 credit riders that I've missed out that you think could be pretty decent shouts. Somebody did comment last time that Berkmos was going to be a really good 6 credit rider, and he turned out to be incredibly good. So thank you to that person who suggested that, because I got a good 300 points from that. So thank you very much. So hopefully we can get a bit more of that in the comments section. And yeah, all that is left to say is to stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Salut!